Hello, this is AviaDev Insight Europe Podcast. My name is Juraj Toth. I'm the Managing Director at AviaDev Europe, and this is our episode number 128. It's probably the most important podcast I've ever done, and it's definitely the most personal one I've ever done, even though it's not directly about aviation. My guest today is Claus Raasted, an expert on strategy, innovation, storytelling, the author of 34 books and 2 in the making, coach at McKinsey. Following the Russian brutal military invasion to Ukraine, like many people in Europe, I got stuck and paralyzed by an intensive mixture of feelings like anger, sadness, fear, anxiety, uncertainty. All of this was of course multiplied by the fact that I live in Slovakia, around 80 kilometers away from the Slovak-Ukrainian border. So then I somehow woke up. I started to send clothes, food and money to charities, helping those in need, and I even spent a night at the border as a volunteer for the Greek Catholic charity, assisting refugees, mostly women and children. Still, it felt sort of wrong for me to go back to business as usual. I figured out I need to talk to someone wiser than me. So I reached out to Claus, as he is one of the most inspiring people I know, and as kind as he is, he very quickly agreed to have a chat with me and even to record it as a podcast. As I figured out that maybe there are more people going through what I am going through. That maybe there is somebody out there in our community, in AviaDev community, in our audience, who needs to listen what we are going to talk about with Claus. It definitely helped me to listen to what Claus was saying about we need to go back to live our lives, both privately and professionally. If we live in the EU or NATO, we are the lucky ones. There are no bombs falling on our heads. We don't need to run away from our homes. So let's go on. And at the same time, if we can and when we can, let's help our Ukrainian brothers and sisters. I really do hope you will enjoy this episode, and I really do hope that it will help you, at least in a way it helped me to record it. Enjoy. Hello, Claus. Welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you, Juraj, and thank you for having me on once more.
Yeah, so it was August 2020 when we spoke for the first time, right before our online event, almost 50 episodes ago. And at this time we spoke a lot about the Churchillian way of not letting a good crisis go to waste. So that was at our online event. However, what we have to face now is slightly different. So let's kick off with general your position on that. So how would you say we should react? Considering what's happening, everything in Ukraine, but many of us are not affected directly, so there are no bombs falling on our heads and we don't have to run away from our homes, but we still feel that mixed feelings of uncertainty, anxiety, sadness. What's your view on that?
So that's an interesting question, because when we talk about right now the crisis, everybody talks about Ukraine. But of course, there are tons of crises going on that are not Ukraine. The different thing here is that this is smack in Europe, and this is close to NATO, and this is the West. So suddenly social media is exploding with Ukraine. There are blue and yellow flags everywhere. Refugees are suddenly people you want to take in and give a hug, instead of people that governments say, no, we don't want them. All these sorts of things make this different. And it is a social media war. It's an information war like nothing else. So just to say where I come from, I live in Copenhagen in Denmark. And that means that on one hand, I'm very far away from the conflict. Denmark is very safe. It's very business as usual. On the other hand, we know that if Russia decides to start World War III, then Copenhagen will probably be invaded on one of the first days because of strategic importance. So I've actually had a conversation with my better half where we've agreed on where to meet if things go to hell and we get separated. I've never in my life thought I'd have that conversation, but I've had it now. And though it feels surreal because our days are just like normal, more or less, we still have that extra edge to it. And I think, as you say, a lot of people are that there's that duality that on one hand, it's very far away, unless you choose to do something, unless you send money or drive to Poland and pick up refugees or go help with a nonprofit, that sort of thing. That's happening all over. But for most of us, it's very far away, yet we know it can get very, very close, like this. That's weird. That's a weird position to be in, because I don't think it's really been like that since the mid-'80s. And I was a child then, and you were probably not even born.
Yeah, that's very probable, yeah. And did that conversation help with your better half? I mean, as you are saying, it was something you never thought you would have, but is that something you would maybe recommend to other people?
It definitely helped. And ironically, we got a little bit of a test, because the other day, and this is a bizarre story, but I'm going to share it because this is real right now. Suddenly, we're sitting at home, and I'm working, she's working, our daughter is in the living room, our 3-year-old daughter is in the living room in the middle of the apartment. So none of us are in the room with her, and suddenly we hear an air raid siren. We hear like, woo, and we go, uh-oh. And Sue immediately starts opening windows to double check, is this coming? Is this outside? What's going on? And I start getting on my phone, starting to Google information. And then we realize it's our daughter's iPad. She's listening to something. We're going, woo! And then we stop for a moment, look at each other, just laugh a bit. And then we look at Sarah, our daughter, and she goes, what's happening? Like, nothing's happening, honey. There's no problem. But we had that few seconds of panic. And during those few seconds of panic, I was so happy that we had that conversation. That one, I know if it all goes to hell, where we will meet. It's a small town in Ireland. So that we have picked a place that is not too far away. It's not Canada, it's not Brazil, but it's also not right at the front. And we've picked a place, and we've picked a way to do it. If everything goes down, if there's no communication, if everything goes to hell, we will try to get there independently. So that, knowing that. Number two, knowing that we've talked about what to do if bombs start falling. We've talked about where to go. We've talked about things like, let us not have suitcases, but have backpacks so we can travel easily. Just that simple thing. And the reason that comforts me is that I've seen, as you have, as everybody has, seen this footage from Ukraine, and you see these people with their cats in cat boxes. You see them dragging suitcases. You see them stuck on highways. And we took a look at that and said, okay, so if worst comes to worst, and we really think it won't, but if it does, backpacks give you much more mobility than big suitcases, even if you have less stuff. We've discussed which things to bring. What is important? What can we leave behind? Are we going to go scrounging for some photo albums in the basement? No. Are we going to grab the gold coin I have in my office? Yes. Good store of value, even though it's not worth a lot. That sort of thing. We're going to bring chargers. We're going to bring extra batteries. Yesterday, I charged our mobile batteries, our extra battery packs, just to make sure they were charged. Hopefully it's going to be nothing, but just to make sure they were charged. We know where passports are. We have checked. Do we have any documents for like home ownership, that sort of thing that we need to bring with us? And where are these things? So all these small things, having the discussion gives me a little bit of extra comfort in case things go crazy. And I hope they won't go crazy. But I would advise anyone on having that, because you can find out that just with simple things, just a simple thing of saying, are we going to bring this picture from our wedding? Are we going to bring this piece of art? Or do we have laptops that are easy to get, or are they on top of closets? All the sort of tiny, small details gives a little bit of extra comfort. And then, of course, you can say, okay, we now feel comfortable because we know we've done what we can from here. We have water for 2 weeks, or we have canned food, or we have a plan, or at least a tiny, tiny part of one. So yes, I'd advise that. Sorry for the very long answer. I'll
no, it's always great. Yeah, we also had many conversations about storytelling, and it's always great, I think, to go through stories to understand how things are and what we can do. Let's switch gears and let's talk about it from the business perspective. is it okay to continue doing business as usual? Is it okay to plan events? In our case, for example, is it okay to communicate as usual as a business?
Yes, yes, and yes. And the reason I say that with such clarity is that the moment we stop living, the bad guys win. And not only that, but society loses, the economy loses. Let's imagine that you and I say, okay, you and I were in a little bit of a tough spot. I'm not going to make any plans until after the Ukraine war is over. Well, who knows? Is it going to be 10 years? Is it going to be 15 years? Is it going to be a week? We don't know. But as long as you're not making plans, you're not spending money. As long as you're not spending money, the people you buy things from are not getting that money. The events you go to, the TVs you would invest in. I'm not saying you invest in a lot of TVs, but just for the sake of argument. The presents you buy for your kids, that sort of thing is what keeps society happening. The events that you go to, well, if nobody's announcing them and nobody's going, there's a whole bunch of people who are suddenly without work. And we saw that with Corona. We saw the event industry collapse. It was destroyed because there were no events and people had to rethink. Now, it's not that we can't go. It's that we're afraid of committing. But let's say you sign up for a conference in November. Well, either November comes around and you go and everybody's happy, or it gets closer and you find out you can't go, and then you contact them. Then you deal with it. Then you say, hey, what can be done? So, yes, do go things. Yes, as a business, show that you are there after this is over. Or if it goes on for a long time, show that this is not going to stop you. Because if we all just stop and do nothing and hold our breath, then the whole economy is going to collapse. And nobody wants that.
Yeah, I agree 100%. So, given what you just said, I think I sort of know what you will say to my other question, which is more about private perspective, but at the same time, very important also for the aviation and for tourism industry. Summer is coming, so is it also okay to talk about summer holiday, to book even a trip?
I'm gonna answer that with a small story, because I'm terrible that way, you know. That is that some years ago, when we started getting Syrian refugees, people escaping from Syria, coming to Denmark, I, along with many others, came and did a little bit of help, not a lot, but a little bit, and met some of them. And I overheard this angry, very Danish couple, very like, and one of them was saying, oh, they're smiling. How hard can it have been then? Yeah. And remember, these are people who are now thousands of kilometers away from the war. They'd gotten somewhere else. They felt safe. They felt maybe not appreciated, but they felt they were at least not in the danger zone. Of course you smile. Of course you try to get what you can out of life, especially if you're a kid, but also if you're an adult. And that means, of course, you should plan your summer vacation. Of course you should talk about going places. Of course you should be allowed to smile. Because, again, if we don't, bad guys win. And if we tell people that, oh my God, I mean, people didn't sit still during World War II, which is kind of pretty recent, huge conflict, and everybody's talking about World War II right now. People didn't just sit for 6 or 5 years and look like stone-faced. They smiled, they laughed, they loved, they had kids, they fell in love, they fell out of love, they argued, they betrayed each other, they met new friends. They tried to live even though something momentous was going on. And we need to do the same. And if you say, oh, we can't talk about anything but Ukraine, then you're not doing any help. Yes, if you get into your car, you go there, or you go to work and you send money, or you volunteer someplace, yes, you're doing a difference. But if all you do is doom scroll social media and go, oh my God, it's so terrible, I must scroll more, then you should have a look in the mirror and realize, who are you actually helping? I'm not saying ignore the conflict. I'm not saying just pretend it's not there. But half an hour of news every day, that's going to get you more than up to date on where you need to be. And endless amounts of looking at social media to feel bad, to feel alive, while others are not, is not going to help anyone. If you want to do that, then instead, work overtime. Send some money down there. Send some money to people who can make a difference. Or if you're close, or if you're that sort of person, take your car, drive down, fill it with warm blankets, make a difference. But doom scrolling in itself is not going to make a difference. doom scrolling that leads to action. Yes.
Yeah, and there's one of the points I wanted to talk about as well. But there is this dilemma about the doom scrolling you mentioned. So, of course, not many of us want to spend hours of our days just to watch the terrible things that are happening in Ukraine. At the same time, we would like to be informed. So, how to find that balance, or do you have maybe any techniques how to avoid doom scrolling, or how to keep it in, let's say, healthy measures?
So I know this is going to sound terribly cheeky, but there are these people out there who actually professionally produce news and information. And if you make sure that you find a couple of news outlets with different perspectives, even a Russian one, if you want to get a little bit more kind of from the other side, then you're going to do fine. You don't have to have everybody's comment that you know on that LinkedIn article that is quoting a CNN piece that is from a Reuters piece. You don't need that. Find some news outlets. That's what these people do. Find something you trust and find something you don't trust, or something you trust less. And if you're lucky enough to have people who are at the front lines, maybe you have some Ukrainian friends, maybe you have a Polish friend that has taken in a family. Maybe you know somebody who's pretty close. Follow them. But you don't need to have 200 people's opinions on this, many of them who have no idea what's going on. Find a few sources that you trust, follow them, make sure that they give you the information you need, and then shut it off. Then stop it. And tell yourself, if this is something I believe in strongly, if I need to take a stance, then more information above a certain point is not going to help. More work, more money set? Yes. More support set? Yes. More information? No. That's really not going to make a difference. If more information was enough, the world would be a lot nicer than it is today, because we've never had more information. It's never been easier to get information. Have we solved all the world's problems? Not yet.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And maybe that's something to think about also outside of war or even COVID or whatever, just to keep mentally healthy and to also be productive. For private life, for work life, just don't to look always on our phones, which I sometimes struggle to do with even before the war. But that's a very strong point. I think no more information won't help anything and anyone.
I'm going to build on that for just a moment, because, as you know, I do coaching amongst other things, but I do quite a bit of coaching. And one of the things people come to me when they want coaching is they're looking for more information. The reality is that if information was enough, then 1 hour of watching YouTube videos and reading articles online will make you a better father, a better husband, a better worker, a better leader. You'll quit smoking. You're going to exercise. All these things, the information is there. Yes, if we look back, then it wasn't always accessible. But now the world is full of information. I can pick up my phone, and within a couple of seconds, I can learn about anything, not from unqualified sources, but from things that are very, very well presented by people who know what they're talking about. That's not, people don't stop smoking because they suddenly learn that it's going to kill them. It's on the packets, right? People stop smoking because they have an emotional reaction that kickstarts a chain of events that leads to them breaking a habit they maybe weren't so happy with to begin with, if that's the case. The same for anything else we do. People don't become better leaders because suddenly they find an article saying, oh, here's a better leader. This could be you. They do it because they read that article, and then they find the motivation to do that. And that's a wholly different thing. This belief that if I just knew more, I'd act differently. I think most modern humans are getting to the point, if they're not already there, where they realize that what keeps us from doing the right thing or the good thing or the smart thing, it's not that we don't know what it is. It's that we have a hard time doing it because it requires dedication, it requires motivation, it requires trust, it requires empowerment, all these sorts of, it requires work. And sometimes it requires things outside your control changing. But it's not that we need information. There's plenty of that out there.
Yeah, that was beautiful. Let's wrap up at the end. So way forward. Personally, I know all the theory. I'm also a big fan of personal development and follow many people, read many books, listen to many podcasts. Focus, my favorite quote is from The Rock, the famous actor. He always talks about his two hands. Focus on things you can do with your own hands. This is in your power. This is what you can influence. But despite all of that, despite all the theory, I know still I got stuck actually for a few days or a few weeks because of all what we talked about. So what's the way forward then?
The way forward is, yes, take in things. Yes, take this seriously. Yes, let it affect your life, but don't let it take it over. And if you want to know how, then look at other areas of your life. What else do you have that you allow to affect you, but you don't let it take over? Maybe your brother has cancer. Maybe you are taking care of a sick parent. Maybe you have friends who are constantly arguing. Maybe there's trouble at work. We all have situations in our lives where we have things that we allow them to affect us without taking over our lives. Look at what are you doing there? Do you shut off the phone? Do you maybe put it in a calendar so it has limited time? Do you allow yourself to say no more than you actually want to? What do you do? Then just do that here.
Thank you very much, Klaus. I already feel much better after talking to you. And I hope this conversation of ours will help many people listening also to maybe get out of the position where we may found ourselves stuck in for the last couple of days or weeks, and really coming back to what I said, to focus on what we can do, focus on the information we let in. Before I say goodbye, so why don't you share with us what are you going through at the moment? Professionally, what are you working on currently? If there is somebody out there, as you mentioned, and many of our audience already know that you're a great coach, you know many things about many things. So if there is somebody out there who wants to reach out to you, how busy are you these days?
So thank you for that question. So these days, I'm pretty damn busy. I have 2 books that I'm finishing that are coming out here in the spring with 2 co-authors, one on innovation centers, one on pricing expertise, and I'm lucky enough to be engaged with some interesting people doing really different projects. One thing that I did as a New Year's resolution here in 2022 was I decided I was going to stop trying to find out what I do, because I do so much different stuff. And I just said, I'm just going to sell Klaus. Whether that's doing strategy or it's doing marketing help or coaching or public speaking or running crazy events, I'm just going to sell Klaus. And we'll see if anybody's buying. It turns out there's some people buying. So I'm a very happy camper professionally. And I think that's the short version from me. Thanks for asking that question.
That's great. Okay, Klaus, thanks a lot. All the best. Keep smiling and appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Juraj. Have a great day.